Hi, how's it going? I've had several people ask me to review Bestarc welders. I picked up a couple to test out, and in this video I'll be taking a look at the ARC200. I also got the MiG 145, but for today I'm just going to be focusing on the ARC200. The ARC200 is a tiny, supposedly 200 amp stick welder. I say supposedly because I've seen so many of these generic welders fail to live up to their claims, especially the tiny ones. And everything else I've seen about this machine seems par for the course for these cheap welders, but we'll see. It is a dual voltage welder that can be run on 120 or 240 volts. It has a synergic mode, which doesn't really make sense because there's only amperage to set on a stick welder, so there's nothing to synergize with. All the synergic button on the machine does is cycle through a handful of preset amperage settings for different electrode sizes. It kind of feels like they just wanted to use that buzzword. It does have adjustable hot start and arc force, and we'll see how they work. This welder also has what it calls lift start TIG, but it's actually scratch start TIG. You could just do scratch start TIG in stick mode, which makes the TIG mode sort of pointless on this machine and a lot of other cheap machines like this. I mean, it's fine to only have a scratch start mode, especially on a welder this inexpensive, but it's like they either don't understand that there is a difference between lift start and scratch start, or they just don't care and they know that lift start sounds better and requires additional controls, so they just lie, create a fake pointless mode, and call it lift start. The included accessories are basically identical to what came with the Yes Welder and Toolium stick welders I reviewed recently, as well as most other cheap stick welders. It has the same aluminum cables covered in the same soft, easy to melt, horrible smelling insulation. And it has the exact same stamped steel work clamp and electrode holder. So that's pretty much it. Fairly simple machine, power switch on the back, power cord with a 240 to 120 volt adapter if you want to run on 120 volts, and that's about it. But before firing it up, let's open it up and see what it looks like inside. With the machine opened, there's two main things that stuck out to me right away. First of all, not only does this not strike me as a 200 amp machine, it strikes me as one of the lightest duty machines I've seen in a long time. First of all, clearly that transformer is tiny. I really don't see how you're going to get a whole lot of output out of that transformer. That is, I mean, again, one of the smallest transformers I've seen in even a small machine in a long time. Also, there's just two IGBTs for the inverter circuit, one on this heatsink and one on this heatsink. And then for the output circuit, there's just two more on this heatsink. I think the least I typically see is three, and even that is in a pretty low output machine. So one of the lower duty machines that I've seen in a long time. The second issue is with grounding, and they almost did an okay job because they brought the ground wire down to the case instead of just putting it on like a mounting screw for the circuit board or something like that. But first of all, it's not even tight. It's just totally loose. The screw is completely loose. And second of all, if you look closely, you can see that not only is the ground just down onto a painted surface here, but there's actually like a star washer which is designed to cut into paint when it's tightened to sort of get around that, but they have it on top of the ring terminal, so it can't even work like it's supposed to. That little star washer is designed to like cut into the paint when it's tightened down, but it's on top of the ring terminal, so it can't even work the way it's installed. So pretty poor showing on the ground. I guess on the plus side, they did use some plastic to create a sort of a wind tunnel here for the airflow, and there's another piece of plastic on the back side of the board to kind of protect from shorts against the side of the case for this board that is pretty close to that side of the case. So it's not all bad in there, but I would be shocked if this machine could put out anywhere near 200 amps. And it's a safety thing. I really think companies should be taking more time and more care in their grounds. But I'm actually going to fix that ground, then we'll get this back together, and we'll see how it does. Well, I'm sorry, but this is probably just going to be one of the shorter welder reviews I've done in a long time because this is one of the most inaccurately rated welders I've looked at in a long time. Seriously, towards the top ever. It is not uncommon to see these cheap welders rated at 200 amps and only able to put out 180 or 160. This one can do 135 on 240 volts and only 95 on 120 volts. And I've said this in the past, for a cheap machine, that actually wouldn't be that bad. That would probably be enough to get a lot of people by. One of the welders that I reviewed positively that I like quite a bit is the ESAB Rogue ES130i, which is only rated to be able to put out 130 amps on 240 volts, and I think that's probably enough for a lot of people. So I think this welder would probably be enough for a lot of people, but it is just rated so inaccurately. They really aren't putting any kind of care or attention into, safety features like preventing people from being shocked if this thing were to short out internally at some point with the ground. I don't know. I just can't get excited enough about a welder like this to really talk about it very much, other than just to say it's grossly overrated and I don't recommend it. And pretty much every review for any welder I've done like this would have gone very differently if they had just advertised it accurately. But if a beginner gets this machine and they're looking at charts online for how hot to run a 7018, or even if they're using the settings on here for what this thing says is what you should run a 7018, they're going to just be mired in absolute frustration, because when this thing says 140 amps, which is actually, on the hotter side for a 1/8 inch 7018, you're actually getting under 100 amps and you're just going to have a hard time starting. When this thing is run even a little bit cold, the arc goes out constantly no matter what rod you're running. I mean, I was running 6013, and if I was running it even a little bit cold, the arc would just constantly go out. And it would do the same thing with 7018 if it wasn't run pretty hot. But you look at a chart and you say, well, I should be able to run a 7018 at, even 120 amps. No, not on this thing, because you're only getting 80 amps at that point. Anyway, not recommended. Sorry I didn't get into, my usual detail and measuring current from the wall and looking at the scope meter for the hot start and the arc force and all that. I just don't think it's worth it. Sorry, this review turned into a little bit of a rant, but I'm just getting a little sick of machines like this. So many people say, well, it's just what you have to expect for these super cheap machines like this. And maybe that is the case now, but that's only the case because it works, because people keep making the machines that are overrated like this and people keep buying them. And sorry, I'm just losing my patience for it. But I don't know. If you do want me to dive a little bit more in depth on this machine, let me know. But it's going to come after a lot of other stuff I have to do, because I have a lot of other welders that are sitting around waiting to be reviewed, and I can almost guarantee none of them are as bad as this. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. And as always, thanks for watching. Take care.